Alice was the type of girl all the boys wanted and all the other girls hated. She had lovely brown hair, big brown eyes, and a perfect body. To make matters worse, she knew she was beautiful, and used it to her advantage whenever she could. She was used to getting her way, and it had made her rather spoiled. This particular spring afternoon, she was relaxing in the park, in the shade of a small oak tree. She removed her shoes and socks and ran her feet through the cool grass. She closed her eyes and breathed deep. She didn't care that she had schoolwork to do. That was for later. Just then, she heard movement around her. She opened her eyes in time to see a white rabbit dart out of the bushes, grab her left shoe, and race back into the underbrush. "Come back here," Alice said, quickly getting to her feet. She ran after the rabbit, following it into the bushes. Alice was running as quickly as she could, trying to follow the rabbit. Suddenly, where there were once thick bushes, Alice saw a large clearing with a gaping hole in the middle. She tried to stop, but her momentum carried her forward and she fell into the hole. Alice screamed as she fell and she closed her eyes, expecting to hit bottom at any moment. When she realized she had stopped moving, she opened her eyes. She was laying on her back in the middle of a large room. There was no sign of the hole she had fallen through. She got up and looked around. The only exit was a small door that Alice didn't think she'd fit through. Alice peeked through the door and saw tall green grass on the other side of the door. Beyond the tall grass was a deep, dark forest. Alice was completely disoriented. She was trying very hard to quell the sinking feeling in her stomach. She had no idea where she was or how she was going to get home. She felt her eyes mist over and had to work very hard to keep from crying. Alice took a deep breath, got down on all fours, and began to work her way to what lay on the other side of the door. She was halfway through when she got stuck. Hard as she tried, Alice couldn't get through and she couldn't back up. That was the last straw. Alice began to cry. She hadn't cried in a long time. She cried great big tears of frustration, moaning as she did so. If she had been back home, she would have been embarrassed to be seen crying so hard. The problem was, she wasn't back home. She didn't know where she was. Just then, Alice heard footsteps. Out from the grass stepped an old lady, who looked at Alice and said, There, dear. Are you stuck?" "Yes," Alice replied, wiping a tear from her eye. The woman kneeled beside Alice and said, "I know just what will get you unstuck." With that, the woman took a spoon and a bottle of liquid out of the apron she was wearing and tried to give Alice a spoonful. "No, really, Alice's protest was cut off as the woman forced the spoon into Alice's mouth. After a couple of spoonfuls, Alice felt very woozy. Noticing this, the woman put the spoon away and began to feed Alice directly from the bottle. Alice took big, deep gulps, and felt even more lightheaded. Then Alice realized she had to pee. Not fully aware of her situation, Alice let herself go and peed her pants. Then she took a few more gulps from the old lady's bottle and realized she was growing smaller. Soon she could easily fit through the door. When she crawled through, the old lady said, "My dear, you've peed in your pants." Alice just sat there in her sodden jeans and smiled. "Does my baby have to poo-poo?" the lady cooed. Alice nodded yes, and the woman helped her to her feet. Alice was the size of a younger person, but she retained her shapely adult-like form. Alice grunted, and the old lady watched as the butt of Alice's jeans expanded until they were ready to burst. "They always seem to do that when they first get a taste of my shrinking formula," the old lady said to herself. "Let's get my baby home and into some nice big diapers, where you belong," said the old woman. Alice smiled and was led by the hand down a small path through the woods to an old cottage. Once inside, Alice's dirty clothes were removed, she was bathed, cleaned, and diapered. Then the old lady placed Alice in a big crib, in a small room just off the main room. Alice fell right to sleep. "There you are," the woman said with a gleam in her eye. "I know just how to care for babies like you." When Alice awoke, she couldn't remember where she was. She sat up and looked around, then noticed she was in a large crib. When Alice realized this, she tried to scream, but the large pacifier that was in her mouth kept her from making a sound. Alice pulled back the covers and nearly fainted. She was clad in nothing but 3 thick flannel diapers, fastened by 2 oversized safety pins. The diapers were so thick she couldn't even touch her knees together. Alice struggled to stand up, but the bulk around her waist made it impossible. She could barely get to her knees. She began to cry again,